Despite being the true heir, she was tossed into a slum-like orphanage and lived through a waking nightmare. While she starved her blood, kin doted on a fraudulent princess as if she were a priceless gemstone. They branded the real girl a liar, reserving their affection only for that hollow fake, truly cold-blooded. Overwhelmed by misery, she eventually perished in the freezing shadows of her own isolation. Standing in those bleak walls, the small girl studied her reflection with a heavy heart. After a long silence, she realized she had actually stepped into the shoes of the story's most tragic victim. She recalled the matron's cruelty during her youth and the future coldness of her own father and brother. The memories of being hit as a child and ignored by her family later on felt all too real. Knowing such a pathetic end was already written for her, Lena felt a wave of dread. There was no way she would sit around waiting for her execution. Right then, a bratty girl appeared and barked orders for Lena to start working in the kitchen. This was Trin, the matron's little snitch, who made a sport out of making Lena's life hell. Predictably, she tried to trip Lena on the way out, but then strangely grabbed her before she hit the floor. This caught Lena off guard. She pulled back, instinctively wondering what kind of game Trin was playing now. Trin hauled her toward the kitchen anyway. Once Lena got rid of her, she frantically checked her clothes. Sure enough, her pocket held a secret: the matron's ring. Trin was trying to frame her for theft. If the matron found that jewelry on her, she would surely be beaten within an inch of her life. Lena pivoted, instantly waiting for Trin to look away before giving her a taste of her own medicine. She then played the part of a concerned friend right as the headmistress arrived to investigate the noise. Seeing the matron's fury, Trin immediately pointed a shaking finger at Lena to shift the blame. She lied, saying Lena shoved her, but Lena just stood there looking like a helpless, wounded bird. "You just fell on your own." Lena sighed while the other bullied children whispered in her defense. Realizing she was losing the crowd, Trin scrambled over to the headmistress in a panic. She screamed that she saw Lena hide the matron's ring in her pocket, making the old woman boil with rage. The woman lunged to grab Lena's throat, but the girl moved with the speed of a cat. She shed her coat in a flash, turning her pockets out to show the world she had nothing to hide. The other kids backed her up, testifying that Lena hadn't even set foot on the upper level today. Trin kept shrieking, but Lena just stared. "But you were the only one upstairs earlier, weren't you?" The headmistress went silent, her eyes narrowing as she turned her icy gaze toward Trin. The ring was found tucked away on Trin instead. The room went quiet as the truth finally sank in. Lena had managed to plant the evidence during the scuffle. Trin began wailing, desperate to explain. She tried to blame Lena, but a sharp slap to the face ended the conversation. Ungrateful thief. The matron dragged the screaming girl away as Trin cried out that today was her only big chance. She had waited so long for this opportunity and couldn't bear to let it slip through her fingers. That's when Lena noticed Trin's fancy clothes and realized exactly what the girl had been up to. Could this be the day Duke Burrow visits the orphanage to find a child to adopt? Because of their strange powers, the Burrow line was often whispered about as a cursed family. To fix their public image, they planned to adopt. Lena knew the Duke was her only way out. It's now or never, Lena thought, grabbing a broom to sweep the front entrance as a decoy. After an agonizing wait, the rumble of a carriage arrived. Lena straightened up and opened the gates. Two noble figures stood there in expensive silks. The intimidating man was clearly the Duke himself. The young boy standing next to him was his son. Lena offered them a soft, winning smile. "You're so handsome, big brother," she said sweetly, instantly charming the boy named Wendy. Lena recalled the boy's role in the novel, knowing he was the tragic second lead who would eventually turn villainous because of that fake Princess Ella. Lena took the lead, her small hand slipping into his, as she guided him toward the headmistress. The Duke faltered for a moment, visibly stunned by her bold gesture. Most children would dissolve into tears or shrink away in terror at his presence, but this little one was cut from a different cloth entirely. After Lena brought them to the office, the Duke laid out his terms for a temporary fostering arrangement. The headmistress immediately scrambled to round up the most promising candidates for his approval. To her surprise, the Duke held up a hand to stop her. His gaze remained fixed on the tiny girl he was cradling. "There is no need for that. This is the child we want." Lena's breath hitched. She never expected him to choose so decisively. It was incredible that His Grace would claim her after such a fleeting encounter. Just like that, he was whisking her away from the nightmare of the orphanage. Touched by the Duke's unexpected kindness, Lena solemnly vowed to him that she would be the most diligent and hardworking child possible. The Duke simply encouraged her to relax and enjoy her new life, promising that he would soon make their arrangement official in the public press. "You're all skin and bones," Wendy teased with a warm smile. "We need to get some hearty meals into you." Suddenly, the carriage gave a violent jarring lurch. The coach shuddered again with a heavy jolt, sending Lena tumbling as she lost her footing on the seat. Fortunately, the Duke's arm shot out to steady her just in time. The raw concern etched across his face left Lena momentarily frozen. She had never experienced such genuine care before. It turned out a row carriage had barreled through a nearby intersection, nearly causing a collision. Peering through the glass, Lena caught a glimpse of the other driver, a man whose face was completely drenched in tears. Upon their arrival at the ducal estate, Lena found a formal line of staff waiting to welcome them home. The sheer weight of the occasion felt overwhelming. Suddenly, a blinding flash of white light exploded right before her eyes. Startled, Lena instinctively dove for cover against the Duke's chest. To her relief, it was merely the flare of a photographer's bulb. Unexpectedly, the photographer collapsed to the ground in a panic, knocking his head against the floor while frantically begging for their mercy. This reaction left Lena utterly bewildered. Even if commoners were intimidated by high nobility, this level of soul-crushing terror seemed excessive. Was the whispered curse of the ducal family truly that frightening? With a dismissive wave, the Duke sent the man away and carried Lena inside the mansion. Ed the butler and Lucy the head housemaid stepped forward to offer their formal greetings. Lena returned their bow, sensing their genuine warmth, yet she cautioned herself not to get too attached to this newfound kindness. She reminded herself that this was only a temporary foster home. She had to use this brief window of time to fundamentally change her fate. Just then, a young boy emerged from the hallway. It was Del, the youngest son of the Grand Duke's household. With a polite curtsy, Lena introduced herself to the three men. "My name is Lena, and I am 6 years old. Thank you for your immense hospitality." Being close in age, Del took an immediate liking to her, his easy friendship catching Lena somewhat off her guard. They weren't the monsters the rumors described. Perhaps their isolation from society simply made them over the moon to finally have a guest. Del curiously asked if she had a pet name, but Lena had never been given one. The Grand Duke decided on one right then. How about Shushu? It reminded him of a soft, airy cream puff, delicate and sweet. When dinner was announced, Wendy swept Lena up in her arms to carry her toward the banquet hall. Del made a fuss, insisting that he should be the one to carry her, but his older brother quickly shut him down. He teased that Del was still too scrawny and might drop her, telling him to come back after he could manage 1,000 sword swings in a row. Undeterred, Del vowed to train harder than ever. Together, the two brothers carefully hoisted Lena into her high chair. Their gentle, protective attention made it feel as though they had truly been siblings for a lifetime. She finally had a loving father, protective brothers, and a safe harbor. Yet the reality remained: she was a discarded princess fleeing a royal death sentence. A single slip-up could still cost her everything. "If only this were my real family," Lena whispered with a heavy sigh. "From this moment on, you can call me Big Brother Wendy," he declared. Del chimed in. "And you have my permission to call me Big Brother Del too." When the food arrived, the girl was paralyzed by the sight of the banquet. She had never seen such a magnificent spread of delicacies in her life. Wendy picked up a light pastry and held it out for her. Lena didn't hesitate to take a massive, hungry bite. As she ate, she lamented all the years she had spent starving while such incredible flavors existed in the world. She resolved to feast like this every day, savoring every exquisite morsel. But mid-meal, a sharp, agonizing cramp suddenly gripped her stomach. She began to retch uncontrollably as the room fell into a panicked silence. Her vision flickered and died as she collapsed into unconsciousness. Lena awoke in a surreal landscape where brilliant, blinding sunlight washed over an endless sea of golden wheat. Out of the shadows, a persistent voice began to guide her, whispering, "You are the only one who can wake me." Staring at the sleeping woman, Lena realized with a shock that it was her future self. She was trapped inside the elven mirror, the same relic that had doomed her in the original story. Slowly, the world came back into focus, and Lena found herself waking up in a soft, quiet bed. Anxious eyes from across the manor were all fixed solely on her. The medic's report confirmed that Lena had endured prolonged, severe starvation. Her fragile gut couldn't process the rich, fatty feast, triggering her sudden, violent illness. She needed quiet rest to heal. The Duke, Wendy, and Del stayed deeply worried. Lena felt a shift. Why the distance? Wendy wouldn't even meet her gaze. Did he hate her now? Then she realized she hadn't bathed since her arrival. She had also been sick at dinner before sleeping for 2 full days. Her scent was likely foul. Panicking, Lena scrambled out of the bed immediately. "I've ruined the sheets," she cried. Wendy quickly urged her to stay still. The Duke whispered to the maid before sending Lena to watch his warmth fading. A shadow of deep gnawing concern had replaced his previously tender expression. The maid scrubbed her clean, yet the girl's internal dread remained completely unwashed. The servant asked if Lena felt tremors or numbness around the royal men. Lena was baffled, unaware of the dark secret haunting the Barrow bloodline. Their inherited power was so intense it caused physical pain to those nearby. Consequently, the public believed the entire ducal family was cursed. The Duke's gloom was born from fear that his energy had broken her. Lena felt only guilt, wishing she could tell them their presence didn't hurt. The head maid then escorted Lena into a massive private dressing room. Racks of stunning new gowns waited. They were temporary fixes for her arrival. "We'll order your custom wardrobe soon." Lena felt a wave of genuine warmth. From the start, the Grand Duke had treated her with such profound dignity. He valued her voice. Protected by the boys and maids, she felt safe. Leaving the orphanage for this palace felt like stepping straight into paradise. There she was a pariah, a lonely child who felt entirely unworthy of love. She had doubted herself, but now she felt a kinship with this family. She was a lost princess who had never known a single kind touch. They were outcasts too. Two lonely lights finally finding heat in each other. She hated that they kept their distance just to protect her from themselves. Seeing her sob, the Grand Duke pulled her into a tight, protective hold. "Please don't avoid me," she begged. "I don't want you to hate me." As the emperor, he had searched the realm for 6 years for his child. A consort claimed the empress and infant had both died during a difficult birth. Though he held a funeral, his instincts screamed that the story was a lie. He knew the child lived because of the elven magic felt at the birth. Driven by that hope, he personally visited every orphanage in the entire land. Prince Lucas also dreamed of his brother, imagining their future life together. "I'll teach him swordplay and carry him everywhere. I've bought so many gifts." The mountain of presents grew, but Lucas's hope began to slowly wither away. Where is he? He wondered. The emperor also had a daughter with Ella. That marriage was purely for politics, built on duty rather than real love. He felt nothing for her refusing to stop seeking his long-lost missing child. "I'll find you," he vowed. Lena sobbed into the Duke's chest, gasping for air. She feared abandonment even as her new family tried to soothe her fears. Slowly, she calmed, especially as the Duke personally fed her some warm soup. With zero background in parenting, the Duke burned her tongue on the first bite, causing a sob that made him sigh at her pained face. She seemed so breakable next to his sons, who polished off every meal without fail. This settled it, he was going to nurse her back to health. He vowed that if she ate properly, he would reward her with treats no commoner could dream of. Later in the garden, Dell called for Shushu, sending her sprinting toward him immediately. He surreptitiously handed her a sweet, warning her not to let Wendy see. Nearby, Wendy was busy charting her recovery with the medic logging every detail of her day. "Shushu, come over here," Wendy called out. She rushed back, being herded between the two brothers like a little bird. When Dell offered to show her some blade work, she finally began to flag. "I'm wiped out," she cried, but Dell just laughed and charged toward her, sword in hand. Sensing a mishap, Wendy lunged forward to parry his brother's strike. He snapped at Dell for being so mindless with a weapon around their sister. Realizing his mistake, Dell looked down and muttered a bashful apology. His crestfallen face was so silly that Lena couldn't help but snicker. The Duke observed their play while receiving a grim update on the orphanage investigation. The children there were skeletal victims of chronic neglect and starvation. In freezing rooms, they wore rags while the director pocketed every cent of the budget. Their suffering was the direct result of her disgusting greed. Watching the stoic Duke's face cloud with fury, the aide realized Lena was truly one of them now, as the Duke requested her presence. He had some hard questions, his usual warmth replaced by a chilling, formal tone. Her stomach dropped, fearing she was being kicked out right then. Had she worn out her welcome in just 14 days? Shaking, she considered throwing herself at his feet to beg for a second chance. Seeing her on the verge of a breakdown, he quickly clarified his intentions, explaining he only wanted to talk about her past home. To calm her, he offered a dish, saying, "Here is that special treat, take a bite." Expecting something warm, the icy puff startled her. It was a frozen cream delight. A shadow of grief crossed his face, likely thinking of his late wife's favorite snack. He then asked for specifics regarding the director's conduct. Lena realized this was her moment to take down her former tormentor. She started by calling the woman good, but soon revealed the truth of the hunger, the cold, the endless labor, and the frequent strikes. "I worked myself to the bone," she whispered, just hoping to become a housemaid one day. The Duke's hands balled into fists, but when she touched him, he squeezed her hand tight. He swore she would never know a moment of pain like that ever again. Her eyes welled up as the weight of his words hit her. He pledged to rain justice on that woman and ensure the other kids were well-fed and warm. A few days later, she went into town with Dell and the nanny for her first real adventure. Seeing her eyes glued to a vendor's drink, Dell dashed off to buy her a cup. In the few seconds the maid was distracted, the little girl vanished. Suddenly trapped in a back alley, Lena found herself staring at the director's cold eyes. The sight of a cloaked figure nearby confirmed the Empress's lackeys were back. Behind the scenes of the main plot, the Empress held the reins of a clandestine guild known as the Tower of White Sorcery. Ever since the Empress dumped her at that asylum, agents were sent routinely to siphon the very soul out of Lena's small body. This cruelty served a single purpose: the Empress's own flesh and blood. Princess Ella lacked even a spark of magic despite her noble lineage, so her mother stole what she needed for her child. Lena was nothing but a battery drained to fuel Ella's status, recalling the agony of having her very life force torn away. She shook with terror and bolted, but her pursuer had already produced an enchanted stone designed to drink her dry. Amidst their frantic scuffle, Lena managed to smash a glass vial the assassin had been clutching. The man saw red. He roared in blind rage, wondering how a mere brat dared to fight back. As that soul-stealing jewel closed and Lena shrieked at the top of her lungs, begging the Grand Duke for salvation. Suddenly, the Grand Duke descended like a vengeful deity, roaring at the wretch to get his disgusting hands off her immediately. Staring at the Duke's kin charging to her rescue, Lena felt as though she were trapped in a beautiful dream. Unfazed, the kidnapper snapped his fingers, raising a shimmering barrier to use the girl as a human shield against the Duke's wrath. Panic rising, she desperately searched for any way to turn the tides. Her eyes landed on the jagged remains of that broken vial, and she didn't think twice. Grabbing a razor-sharp shard, she plunged it deep into the man's spine, causing his magical defense to evaporate instantly. Seizing the opening, the Duke's blade came crashing down, leaving the assailant crumpled on the floor like a discarded carcass. Her gaze remained locked on that cursed jewel rolling across the dirt. If she could just crush it, her mana would finally be safe, yet her body was completely spent. Raising a finger felt like moving mountains. She reached for the stone, but her muscles simply refused to cooperate. When Wendy swept her up to retreat, Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. That stone had to be pulverized. Suddenly, the downed assassin twitched his fingers, crawling toward the discarded artifact once more. Before he could touch it, Dell's blade sang through the air, cleaving him down while he playfully winked at his sister. Refusing to die, the sorcerer hissed a final incantation, igniting a glowing seal on the floor. The jewel leaped back to his grip as his form began to fade into a ghostly mist mere seconds from vanishing. A massive broadsword then plummeted from above like a bolt of lightning, obliterating the stone and impaling the man's hand to the earth with such raw power that his heart gave out instantly. He coughed up a final spray of crimson and went limp. The Duke's eyes burned with cold fury, mourning his lack of restraint. With the witness gone, their motives remained a mystery. But Dell just shrugged it off as if it were nothing. They had other ways to talk. The Duke flicked his wrist, sending a blade whistling past the director's head, taking her hair. The woman collapsed, trembling like a leaf as she blubbered for her miserable life. He stared down at her like a stain on his boot, disgusted that she dared to lay a hand on his ward. Watching this tyrant grovel like a cur brought back a flood of memories from the nights Lena spent crying in the dark. A wave of bitter sorrow washed over her, stinging her eyes, but Wendy pulled her close in a protective embrace. "Hush, little one. No one will ever harm a hair on your head again, I promise." When the Duke demanded the identity of the corpse, the woman stayed silent, knowing a confession meant certain death. He let out a cold, mocking laugh. Did she honestly believe she was walking away from this alive? Leveling his blade at her throat, he instructed his sons to always pull a weed out by its roots to prevent trouble. Noticing the murderous glint in their father's eyes, the brothers rushed to intervene. They reminded him that little Shushu was watching and would be traumatized. The Duke sighed, regretting his temporary lapse in judgment. He ordered them to take the girl back to the estate, but the desperate director shrieked Lena's name. Begging for a miracle, she cried out for forgiveness, but Lena only met her eyes with a chilling, hollow stare. Ignoring the plea, she asked the Duke if a kinder soul would be put in charge of the home. She wanted to know if the beatings, the starvation, and the forced labor would finally become a thing of the past. Once he promised her it would be so, she turned back with a small smile. "When I cried for help, you laughed. You watched me suffer without a hint of pity. Now that the roles are reversed, you'll find no mercy here. A split second of distraction was all it took for his little sister to be snatched away. Even though the Grand Duke rescued her himself, Dell was still haunted by his failure. It was my fault. Seeing his guilt, Lena tried to comfort him, saying the villain was just too fast. You did nothing wrong. I knew you and father would never stop looking for me. She couldn't explain that sudden surge of faith, especially since she had barely been there a month. Her survival was entirely owed to the Duke's swift intervention and the family's support. Yet, the imperial consort was relentless. Luck had saved Lena once, but would it hold again? What if that woman decided to crush the entire ducal house just to get to her? The consort held every advantage: royal blood and a family legacy that controlled the nation's food and land. Despite being a prestigious bloodline, years of political isolation had left the Duke's influence among the other lords surprisingly fragile. How could they withstand a united front if she turned the entire aristocracy against them? They had shown her such kindness that she couldn't bear the thought of them suffering for her. Noticing her pale face, Wendy checked her temperature and found her burning up with a fever. Lena felt the world tilt as dizziness washed over her. Her throat was parched, craving a drink. No sooner had the thought crossed her mind than a torrent of water materialized, soaking her completely. The trio stood there in total shock. As Lena rose, a violent chill racked her small frame. Wendy pulled her close to share his warmth. Shivering, Lena wished for a roaring hearth. Suddenly, intense heat erupted as the air ignited. Fire! Someone screamed. Elle reacted instantly, smothering the blaze with a heavy blanket before anyone was burned. Her body felt like it was spiraling out of control. Darkness edged her vision and she collapsed. In the dead of night, Lena stirred to find a mysterious silhouette standing by her bedside. A soft hand touched her brow. "Rest now, my chosen one," a soothing voice whispered. She drifted back into sleep, where jagged memories played out like a broken film. The images felt hauntingly familiar. A boy with silver hair watched over her like a rare jewel. "With your powers still bound, this dream is the only way I can reach you. The pain you feel is just your elven heritage stirring. You must recover soon. I'll ensure you find peace this time." Zen's image vanished, but his promise echoed in her ears. "Come find me, I'm waiting." First the water, then the fire. Lena's body had been pushed too far. Drained of every ounce of energy, her consciousness had finally given out. Dell was frantic, nearly tackling the physician until Lena finally blinked her eyes open. A wave of relief swept the room. "What happened to the headmistress?" Lena croaked. The Duke's expression hardened. "Between the theft of funds and her horrific abuse of the children, plus your abduction, I ordered her immediate execution." Then a new guest was summoned. Master Iggy from the Azure Tower arrived to uncover the truth behind her kidnapping. The mention of a sorcerer sent a jolt of pure anxiety through Lena's chest. "Don't be afraid," the Duke comforted her. "We're right here. Just tell us what happened." He used a glowing stone. "It felt like my very life was being sucked out of me. It was always like that at the orphanage." Her words left the room thick with cold rage. "We must identify your internal energy," Iggy said, "to ensure you're never vulnerable again." Lena froze. That power. It was the sacred spiritual mark, reserved only for the royal line. If the Duke knew what he cast her back, she remembered the princess who stole her life. Returning to the father and brother who discarded her was a fate worse than death. There was no home for her there. But seeing the Duke's concern, she couldn't keep her secrets. The truth was bound to surface. This time she would place her ultimate faith in the Duke. Lena's fingers suddenly intertwined with IGG's. The very moment his mana flared, she felt a strange, vibrant energy coursing through her veins. IGG's eyes snapped wide in sheer disbelief. Pressed by the group's frantic questions, he confessed that it wasn't magic he felt, but a sacred spirit power. But wasn't such divine strength reserved solely for the blood of kings? Was it possible that Lena was a lost princess? A memory surfaced in the Grand Duke's mind of the Empress, who had tragically passed away during childbirth 6 years ago. If that infant had survived, the age would match Lena's perfectly. He dismissed IGG, immediately ordering him to keep the day's revelations strictly under wraps. The Grand Duke offered a gentle, grounding presence to the young girl who seemed utterly lost in despair. "Lena, do you wish to reclaim your place with the royals? To live as a princess?" She responded with a frantic, tearful shake of her head. "I never want to go back. If I truly am a princess, then why was I abandoned in that orphanage?" Her eyes welled with bitter tears. "And why was I left to suffer alone with no one to shield me?" She clutched the Grand Duke's sleeve, her voice trembling with raw emotion. "I'm nothing more than a nameless orphan. Do Do you not want me anymore? You're right, I have no use for an orphan. Her heart shattered at his words, but then he leaned in, wiping her cheeks. However, I am in desperate need of a daughter. Dropping to one knee, he looked at her with profound sincerity and vowed, I will protect you for the rest of my days. Will you honor me by becoming my child? He then presented a shimmering pendant. This treasure has been passed down to the women of my house for generations. Even if you refuse my offer, nothing changes. I will still be your shield against the world. I will honor whatever path you choose. Lena yearned to join this compassionate family, yet she hesitated. She was on the verge of saying yes, but the fear that her presence might bring ruin to his household held her back. Since her spirit energy had awakened, Lena's health had surged, and she no longer appeared so frail and ghostly. Still, she often spent hours lost in thought while staring at the necklace, failing to notice when Wendy and Dell entered. Shushu, are you still debating whether to join our family? We aren't trying to pressure you at all. Father said, the choice is entirely yours. They reminded her, though Dell was clearly struggling to stay patient. I want to be with you all more than anything, but I'm terrified that staying will tarnish the Grand Duke's noble name. To sweep away her lingering doubts, the siblings decided to take Lena to a very specific location. Upon seeing the beautifully refurbished manor, Lena barely recognized it as her former crumbling orphanage. The moment the other children spotted her, they rushed forward, surrounding her with joyful cheers. They marveled at how radiant she looked, calling her as lovely as a princess, and thanked her for the better life they now enjoyed because of her. Kate stood there, blinking in total bewilderment. Wait, what on earth are you all talking about? Don't you know, because you got rid of that wicked headmistress, we finally have a kind woman looking after us. We even have warm coats for the winter now, and never have to worry about empty bellies. You're truly incredible, Lena. It's no wonder the Grand Duke adores you so much. Hearing this, Lena smiled and asked if anyone knew where Trin had gone. The kids explained that after being punished by the former headmistress, Trin fell dangerously ill and was moved to a different facility. Though their past was rocky, Lena sincerely hoped Trin had found a home where she would never face such cruelty again. As the evening shadows grew long, Lena bid a heartfelt goodbye to her old companions. She asked Wendy why they had brought her there, and Wendy replied, to show you that your kindness has already changed lives. A girl as brilliant as you will leave a mark wherever she goes. Why waste time worrying about something as trivial as reputation? After returning to the estate, the Grand Duke led Lena into a hidden, majestic gallery. This was the Hall of Lineage, showcasing the storied history of their house through portraits of every previous head. He turned to Lena with a soft expression. One day the portrait of my successor will be hung upon these walls as well. Pointing toward an ancient canvas, he explained, this is our founding ancestor whose true form was that of a mighty dragon. Her eyes held a predatory grace. Lena tilted her head. A dragon? You mean a giant grumpy lizard with wings that breathes fire? A lizard, you say? An unfamiliar, playful voice suddenly whispered right into her ear. Startled, Lena spun around toward the sound, her heart racing as she scanned the room. Standing there were 6 silver-haired men watching her with piercing violet eyes. Why did they feel so hauntingly familiar? She tugged on the Grand Duke's sleeve to alert him, but when she looked back, the mysterious figures had vanished. Assuming her mind was playing tricks, she turned her attention to a delicate, glittering crown displayed in the center of the hall. The Grand Duke reached out and took the crown, intending to place it upon Lena's head himself. Lena froze, terrified by the obvious luxury. What if I ruin it? She fretted. Don't worry, came the soft reply. We'll simply replace it. He explained their history, noting that the duchy once served as a mere subordinate territory under imperial rule. Since he ruled his own land, her becoming his child meant she would finally be a legitimate princess by law and blood. Furthermore, every heirloom traditionally reserved for the family's daughters would pass directly into her hands. He laid out these riches, granting her total autonomy. There is no pressure, he assured her. Rejecting this offer is perfectly fine. Regardless of your choice, these gifts stay. Lena felt a sudden crushing wave of thankfulness. The affection they showered upon her surpassed her wildest dreams. She felt utterly indebted, wondering if she could ever match such profound generosity. Letting him down was the last thing she wanted. Yet she feared her presence invited catastrophe. You're unaware of the risks, she whispered. Adopting me puts a target on your back. Is the Empress Dowager your concern? He asked. Exactly. Her daughter, Princess Ella, lacks even a spark of spiritual essence. To hide her weakness, they dispatched assassins to harvest my magic and graft it onto her. This loomed over her like a shadow. Surely the consort would strike again to claim the rest of her power. When that day came, she feared her new family would pay the price for her existence. She'll mark you as a rival. What if she targets you or my brothers next? The fallout will be endless. Knowing the chaos I bring, do you honestly still want me as your own? My house isn't so fragile that we'd fail our daughter. We possess more than enough power to keep you safe from them. Cast your fears aside. He then checked if she had any lingering desire to seek her biological kin at court. Never. They're strangers to me. The Emperor and Prince care only for Ella. I'm nothing to them. That palace was a living nightmare. I'm truly orphaned in this world, and what of me, he countered. I'm offering to be your kin. My sons and I will shield and treasure you. No harm shall reach you here. Be my child and stay. Under his relentless warmth, Lena's walls crumbled, and she finally embraced what her soul truly craved. I choose joy with you despite the risks. I'll spend my life making this up to you. Will you be my father? He gathered the weeping girl into a hug, allowing her to release years of suppressed heartache. In the silence, he swore to pour every ounce of his affection into mending her shattered spirit. Wendy and Dell burst in just then. The news that she was officially their sister sent them into a state of pure bliss. Count on us to watch your back. Just promise to stay happy with us. A solitary child and a fragmented household finally became whole in that single profound instant. Tightly knit in a group embrace, they began to heal together, pledging an eternal bond of loyalty and love. The discarded princess finally stopped running, choosing instead to settle into the Duke's radiant, welcoming home. Now blessed with a daughter, the Duke dove headfirst into his role as a doting, protective father. He sat down to read her a tale for the first time. Which one, Shushu? This one, Your Grace. He gently cut her off. We're family now. Remember the special name. You're supposed to call me just 2 syllables. Bracing herself, she softly murmured Papa, a word that sent the man's pride soaring to new heights. She drifted off to the soothing rhythm of his narration, living the very dream she'd held since childhood. Her dreams transported her to an endless, breathtaking meadow, overflowing with vibrant blossoms. As she gathered a bouquet for her new family, a frantic internal warning shattered her peace. Snap out of it, draining your essence like this is going to get you killed. She snapped awake to find her bedroom overrun with flora, trapping a suspicious man armed with a blade and a heavy bag. Cold dread washed over her. Was this an assassin dispatched by the Empress to finish her off? Her piercing scream echoed through the halls. Simultaneously, miles away at court, the crown prince bolted upright in bed. A sudden ripple of magic hit him, a signature so recognizable, it made his chest ache with longing. Is he out there? Is my little brother actually alive? Driven by hope, he sprinted to find the Emperor. However, the sovereign silenced him instantly. Lower your voice. The walls have ears. Once a privacy ward was cast, the prince couldn't hold back. He's alive. My brother is still out there. A slow nod confirmed his suspicions. The Emperor had already felt the same resonance. That kid's magic pulse traced back to the Duke's lands. His child lived. The Empress had played him for a fool. That woman definitely swapped the baby out before the casket was even lowered. The realization that he'd been robbed of his own blood sent the Emperor into a volcanic rage. He'd hunt down every rat involved. Father and son made a pact they were bringing their boy home. Lena's shriek brought the guards charging in, only for them to freeze at the bizarre botanical nightmare. What was with the flora and this random guy? The Duke and his boys sprinted over to check on her. Weirdly, her last magical flare had left her with a skull-splitting migraine. Now she felt zero pain, just a wild, buzzing sense of pure, unadulterated triumph. She told the Duke how she'd been playing with dream vines in a field of flowers. When she woke, this stranger was just there, tied up. Dell beamed. Shushu, you're a total badass. Dream of a giant chocolate cake next, Dell joked, though his father looked deeply unsettled. Lena noted his grim face. Was her magic actually more terrifying than she realized? Once the Duke signed the papers, the girl became the family's most precious, spoiled little treasure. She got her own maids and even a fierce Lady Knight Roland to serve as her shadow. To say thanks, Lena crafted handmade charms for everyone. The head maid nearly burst into happy tears. She never guessed such tiny, silly trinkets could make the staff this incredibly emotional. My Lady Roland whispered, kids deserve love just for existing. You've earned every bit of this. Maids were whispering nearby. The palace was calling for all gifted individuals to report to the capital. Suddenly, the ground vanished as someone hoisted Lena high into the air. Dell had spotted his little sister and basically tackled her with a giant hyperactive hug. He saw the tag on Roland's neck and snorted. Gross, what is that ugly piece of junk? Roland flaunted it proudly. The young lady made it. It says, I am the world's gentlest knight. Hearing Lena made it, Del froze, wishing he could swallow his tongue. Lena just ignored the idiot. She slipped a charm onto Wendy's neck. For my savior. You are the one who rescued my soul. Del spiraled, shaking Lena, while begging for mercy. Shoo, I am so sorry, I am a dummy. I want one too. Seeing him squirm, Lena smirked. But didn't you say it was hideous? I love hideous. In my vocabulary, ugly is just a code word for gorgeous. Giggling, she handed him a tag, world's cutest brother. Here for my absolute favorite guy. Del held that scrap like it was a holy relic. Finally, Lena headed for the Duke's private office. The second she walked in, the entire staff greeted her, like she was a tiny returning queen. Her father looked totally dejected. Is there nothing for me? Am I the only one left out? Am I not special enough? He pouted. Lena giggled and held out his prize. For you, Daddy. The Duke huffed. Why was I last? I should have been first. Lena could not stand his puppy dog eyes. It says, best dad ever, and it is full of love notes. Please do not be mad. He loved when she acted a bit clingy. Instantly, he put it on, grinning like a huge dork. He was over the moon, but then a sudden chilling memory killed his joy. He had already seen the royal summons. They had felt her magic flare and were hunting her down. They wanted every gifted person at the palace immediately. Lena, however, was just confused. Princess Ella had sucked her dry for years. Why was the crown only noticing her now? Was this a sign that she had finally broken the chains of her original miserable fate? Seeing her look so grim, the Duke feared she hated being here. No, I love it here, she cried. I am just scared. Why do they want me now? You and my two brothers are my only real family. Don't send me back. Even if the Emperor himself comes knocking, don't let them take me. If you want to stay, nobody is taking you. Determined, the Duke started hunting for the best tutor. He posted a massive bounty for a top-tier governess to educate his precious little lady. One look at that recruitment flyer sent the Empress into a seething rage, her jaw tightening until it throbbed. She'd planned for her father to dispatch a team to seize the girl and drag her back, but the mission ended in a total disaster. Retrieving her was now a nightmare since she'd crawled under the Grand Duke's wing for safety. The initial scheme was to siphon her elven essence before her awakening, keeping her stashed away as a mere sacrificial lamb. It was a shock that the Emperor realized the brat survived, but it didn't matter, she would pounce before he could ever track the child down. She'd ensure the Grand Duke lamented the day he took that girl in. Meanwhile, he'd already secured Professor Lima from the Royal Academy to tutor Lena. Bursting with excitement, Lena offered a graceful bow as a warm welcome to her new teacher. Instead, the woman sneered, mocking her with the icy disdain one might expect for a gutter rat who'd never seen a finished room. A true lady offers only a refined smile, grinning like that is utterly beneath us. Then again, you're just a nameless orphan, aren't you? It's hardly shocking that no one bothered to civilize you. Lena froze, never imagining her tutor would be so venomous. Why did those eyes treat her like some stray animal? Never mind. I shall mold you into something resembling a proper noblewoman. Squirming in discomfort, Lena wondered if she truly carried the stench of the streets in her every movement. How exactly should a lady act? She whispered. Must I be flawless just to earn the right to be his daughter? The woman's face contorted instantly as she hurled another frigid accusation at the girl. Your speech is so vulgar, it's frankly embarrassing. Crushed by the relentless insults, Lena's confidence began to crumble. Her father and the servants showered her with compliments, but were they all just being kind because they pitied her? A true lady is a perfect blend of grace, refined character, and breathtaking elegance. But above all, it's the blood that matters. Lena saw through it then. The woman simply despised her common origins. But Wendy's words echoed in her heart. Forget your past or your rank. To me, you're the most precious soul alive. That memory bolstered her spirit, allowing her to meet the teacher's piercing gaze head-on. I am a lady of this house, the sole daughter of the Grand Duke himself. Yet you've completely disregarded my rank and failed to even offer a proper greeting. The teacher let out a scoffing laugh. My dear, it's natural to feel humiliated by your lowly roots. And why exactly would I feel that way? I've never once regretted where I came from. Facing Lena's newfound steel, the woman grudgingly lowered her head to introduce herself. I am Lima Bane. This month we shall strive to reach even 1/3 of Princess Ella's prowess. Lena was floored. What did Ella have to do with her lessons? Lima's expression softened into one of pure, unadulterated worship. Young as she is, Princess Ella is the pinnacle of perfection. You have a mountain of catching up to do." Lena stood there stunned. They were the exact same age, yet the teacher treated them like they belonged to different species. The woman stubbornly refused to acknowledge Lena's worth, projecting a deal with an attitude that left Lena absolutely livid. "If you worship nobility so much, I'll give you a first-hand taste of what a lady's power can do." Just as the Grand Duke and her brothers sat for dinner, Lena suddenly dissolved into a fit of sobbing. Witnessing her distress, Wendy and Dell scrambled to her side in a panic. "Shushu, talk to us. Who hurt you?" She only wept more piteously. With a heavy heart, the Grand Duke demanded to know what was wrong. "Father, am I a burden? Does my past make you ashamed to call me yours?" Those words shattered the Grand Duke's composure instantly. "Who on earth put such poisonous thoughts into your head?" "Was it your tutor? She told me that my very existence would bring shame upon our noble name." "Do I truly embarrass you?" Father Lena's whimpering plea cut him to the core, and his eyes flashed with a terrifying predatory light. "Headmaid, drag that woman here this instant." He was going to make sure no one ever belittled his darling girl again. He confronted the tutor, his voice dripping with venom. "My daughter is a mere 6 years old. Yet, after one session with you, she's questioning her own worth. Exactly what kind of education are you providing?" The woman dared to shrug it off. "It's standard procedure. One must acknowledge their failings to truly grow into their future potential." Lena was speechless. The woman was an absolute master at twisting her words into clever excuses. "Your Highness, it's beneficial for her to understand her place. There is a vast chasm between her and the true ladies of the capital. However, under my guidance, I shall mold her into the most impeccable noblewoman in the empire." The Grand Duke cut her off mid-rant with a sharp gesture. "Listen closely. Shushu is my daughter and mine alone. She doesn't need to measure up to anyone." Gathering Lena into a tight embrace, he whispered, "My sweet girl is already the finest treasure in existence. I swore I'd never allow another tear to fall from my daughter's eyes. Consider yourself unemployed." The tutor turned pale with fright, begging to stay and continue her lessons with the young lady. Lena found the woman's desperation highly suspicious. Why was she so hell-bent on staying? Sensing a hidden agenda, Lena convinced the Grand Duke to let the teacher remain so she could uncover the truth. He worried for her happiness, but Lena was firm in her decision to keep the woman close. She eventually had to resort to her secret weapon, playing the part of the adorable pouting daughter. The Duke finally caved, though he left the teacher with a chilling warning regarding Lena's well-being. That night, just as sleep began to take hold, a boy with snowy hair appeared at Lena's bedside. She recognized him instantly as the ghost-like figure she'd seen before, his expression cold and distant. A wave of strange familiarity washed over her, but her hand passed right through him when she tried to reach out. He whispered a single cryptic warning to stay alert before vanishing into the thin air. Lena blinked, wondering if the phantom was trying to warn her about Madame Lima's intentions. It made sense given that the Grand Duke hadn't even announced her adoption to the public yet. How did the teacher know so much about her? Lena's heart grew heavy with the realization she was a target. Suspecting the Empress was behind it, a lonely Lena retreated to the garden to process her thoughts. Earlier, a clumsy laundry maid had accidentally torn the delicate ribbon on her silk nightgown. Since it was her very first gift from her father, Lena had completely lost her cool in the heat of the moment. Looking back, she felt terrible for blowing up at the girl over a simple, honest mistake. Nicole tried to comfort her, insisting it was only natural to be protective of such a precious keepsake. Still, Lena knew that no matter how hard she tried, some people would always resent her presence. Years at the orphanage had taught her exactly how to read a person's hidden malice. Her sharp intuition was a survival trait that made Nicole's heart ache for the childhood Lena had lost. Nicole then revealed that the laundry maid had been seen whispering and plotting with Madame Lima late last night. It was clear that the Duke's threats hadn't scared the tutor off at all. Instead, she was busy spreading poisonous rumors behind Lena's back. It was highly irregular for a high-status tutor to be so cozy with a lowly maid. She definitely had a scheme. Lena summoned the girl, who arrived trembling, certain that her final judgment had come. The maid was terrified that she was being called in to face the consequences for the ruined nightgown. She expected a harsh punishment, convinced that the young lady was still seething with rage. She begged for forgiveness through her tears, but the expected anger never came. "I admire your courage to admit your faults," Lena said. "I want you to be my personal maid." Pring stood frozen in shock, searching for any sign of a cruel joke, but Lena looked serious. Could she really go from scrubbing floors to serving the young lady directly? It was a miracle. Her world shifted instantly as she began her new duties with a grateful heart. Suddenly, Lena's tone went ice cold. "Tell me, Have you been slandering me in the shadows? The question nearly scared the life out of Pring, who immediately began to stammer out her innocence. I already know the teacher put you up to it, Lena bluffed, causing Pring's heart to skip a beat. The girl collapsed to her knees, confessing everything about how the teacher had manipulated her. She was the one pushing me to vent my frustrations. I never meant you any harm, my lady. The tutor spent her free time filling the servants' heads with vague, nasty lies about Lena. She played the part of a sympathetic friend just to breed resentment and gossip among the staff. If the girl's story was true, Madame Lima was intentionally sabotaging Lena's reputation. Pring, I need to know why she is doing this. Lena offered her a chance at redemption, and Pring vowed to serve her faithfully from that moment. That evening, the Grand Duke arrived to soothe Lena's worries with a gentle bedtime story. Their tender moment was cut short when a frantic servant burst in with urgent news. Leaving Lena behind, the Duke followed the aide outside. Sleep eluded her as she lay restless while Dada slipped away to spy. Two desperate noblemen had arrived at the estate pleading for the Duke's intervention. A mysterious plague was ravaging their lands, claiming countless lives that their own healers could not save. They begged for his assistance, leaving Lena confused about why they would seek out her father specifically. Did he have some secret connection to this? Spotting her nearby, the Duke sighed, "Forgive me, no bedtime story tonight." He tucked her back in, whispering for her to rest before departing, yet her mind remained wide awake. Gazing through the glass, she noticed an unusual swarm of visitors gathered at the mansion under the moonlight. The gravity of the crisis was undeniable. Just then, Del came rushing into her room. Buzzing with energy, he tried dragging her down to see the chaos until Roland intervened. "Your Highness's bedtime was hours ago." Ignoring the guard, Del scooped her up and bolted. "My sister and I are going on a quest." Determined to have his way, the pair crept through the darkened halls while they should have been dreaming. Lurking by the study doors, they pressed their ears against the wood to catch the elders' grim conversation. A gruesome malady had hit two hamlets. Victims suffered high fevers for 3 days before succumbing to total hemorrhaging. Physicians were baffled, but as Lena listened, a chilling sense of recognition washed over her. This was no ordinary sickness, it was a death sentence. Suddenly, Del's loud whispering alerted the Duke. Their cover was blown instantly. "Del Shushu, what on earth are you doing here?" The Duke glared at the guard for his negligence, prompting Lena to jump in before Roland took the fall. "I am the one who could not sleep. Father, I begged him to bring me." Del shielded her, claiming, "I am the kidnapper here, father." Left speechless, the Duke's anger fizzled out. Relenting, he allowed them to stay. "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce my beloved daughter." The visiting nobles offered polite smiles at her charm before the mood shifted back to the dire plague. Every victim had perished in a manner too gruesome to describe. Bleeding from every orifice, they died in agony, leaving the villages looking like they had been drowned in a crimson sea. It clicked, this was the Ruby Lake curse from the book where Ella used her spirit magic to become a revered saintess. Yet this tragedy was supposed to happen much later and nowhere near the Duke's territory. Why was the timeline shifting, and why was the outbreak happening right here, right now? She knew the dark truth: it was not a virus, but a calculated mass poisoning of the local water supply. In the novel, Ella discovered the source and framed the Grand Duke, eventually leading him to the executioner's block. Her brother Wendy had then inherited the title under the shadow of their father's disgrace. Terrified by the thought of his execution, Lena began to shake her father, instantly noticing her sudden pallor. She tried to play it off, claiming the scary stories were just getting to her. Del assumed the talk of death had spooked her, while the Duke pulled her close, promising everything would be fine. "I will handle this," he assured, but her anxiety only spiked. What if the plot was already set in stone? If the crown used this to frame him again, would she be forced to watch her family crumble a second time? Del pulled her into a tight embrace. "Sleep in my room tonight. Big brother will keep the monsters away." The timing was all wrong, years too early. Even Ella was too young now to perform her miracle cures. What was the motive behind such a massacre? Then a dark realization struck her. If the finger is pointed before the investigation even begins, is the accuser not usually the real culprit? There is always a prophet in tragedy. A daring theory began to take shape in her head. Ella was the one who doomed him in the book. Were she and the imperial consort orchestrating this for political gain? Were they truly monstrous enough to butcher an entire village just for a power play? It was a vendetta. The consort was punishing the Duke for adopting her, aiming to dismantle his house entirely. Faced with such a heavy burden, Lena felt lost, while Del remained oblivious to her inner turmoil. He simply held her close, whispering soothing words. By morning, Prank arrived, pressing a small vial into her hand. "Everything's in place." She swallowed the hook. Lena noted her face, masking her usual warmth with a chilling gravity. Spill it, every detail. That woman was supposed to be the young princess's mentor, wasn't she? And yet she gave Pring the maid a direct order to plant a mysterious vial inside Lena's vanity. She promised that once discovered, Lena would be kicked out of the Grand Duchy forever. Terrified by the tutor's ruthless plot against a mere child, the maid immediately confessed everything to Lena. Cracking the seal, Lena was met with a bizarre cloying scent as the purple fluid faded into a clear liquid. What is this stuff? How could a simple bottle get me banished from my own home? Wait. The ruby lake toxin. Suddenly, every piece of the puzzle clicked into place. A massive wave of fatal poisonings was about to devastate the Grand Duke's lands. And they'd find the source in Lena's quarters. Since she held rare spiritual gifts, the Empress wouldn't execute her, not yet. She'd claim Lena was too young for the gallows, opting for exile instead. Falling into that woman's clutches meant a lifetime of agony. Her adoption by the Duke had clearly ruined the Empress's opening move. She was moving up the schedule, launching the attack years earlier than expected. She's coming for me. Realizing the stakes, Lena knew she couldn't just play victim anymore. It was time for a confrontation. Charging into the tutor's chambers, she wore a mask of innocent affection. As she reached for the woman's hand, the tutor recoiled with a sharp, dismissive jerk. "Forgive me, I simply dislike physical contact," she lied. Lena's eyes darted to the packed luggage resting nearby. Planning a quick getaway after the murder, Lena produced the vial. "Look what I stumbled upon in my bedroom." "Recognize this, teacher?" The woman's face turned to stone. "No idea. Why bring your trash to me?" "How could you not? It shares the exact same scent as your own perfume. This is lethal." Caught off guard by the girl's insight, the tutor's gaze turned murderous just as Pring arrived. Seeing the maid, the woman snapped. "You incompetent brat, you couldn't even plant a simple bottle. What a waste." Dropping the act, she lunged forward and crushed her hand around Lena's neck. "How did a brat like you identify the toxin?" Undeterred, Lena choked out. "The Empress sent you, didn't she?" She barked at Pring to pin the girl down while she readied a heavy bag for the abduction. "So, kidnapping was the plan all along. You really are a piece of work." Despite her resistance, the small child was easily restrained. "I'm the villain, please. You're the monster. A child who slaughtered innocent people before trying to run like a coward. What a wicked little girl." The woman sneered down at the trapped child, savoring her victory. She turned her venom on the maid. "If you value your life, go tell everyone the little lady is a mass murderer." Fury boiled in Lena. This witch was framing her for a massacre. Just as the blindfold descended, the door splintered open. The Grand Duke burst in, flanked by Wendy and Roland. They walked right into the middle of the kidnapping attempt. Wendy dove to protect his sister while the Duke's hand clamped around the tutor's throat like a vice. "You dared to lay a hand on my child." As the Duke prepared to end her life, Lena cried out, "Wait, father, not yet. She still has information." The Duke signaled Roland to escort Lena out, but a sharp cry from Pring stopped them. Wendy's blade was already biting into the maid's skin. He had zero mercy for a traitor, but Lena desperately pleaded for the girl's life. Lena explained she'd staged the whole thing, ordering Pring to play the villain 5 minutes after her arrival. She'd also sent Nicole to fetch her father and brother 10 minutes later. "She was just following my lead. Let her go, brother." Shaking from her brush with death, Pring looked at Lena with pure devotion. She'd expected to be cast aside for her past gossip, a crime that usually meant a death sentence. But the young miss had chosen forgiveness over vengeance. To her, Lena was a literal saint. Later, Wendy approached Lena with a grim update. The tutor wouldn't talk. Everyone knew the Empress pulled the strings, but without proof accusing her was treason. Besides, this toxin lacked any known cure. Were they truly expected to just stand by while the townspeople perished? From the start, the Empress had zero intention of ever providing a remedy. Seriously, despite her royal blood, she treats ordinary people like nothing more than disposable pawns for her schemes. Her cold-heartedness is beyond belief. "I won't ever let this go." A shadow of worry crossed Wendy's face as she watched Lena. "Shushu, you were nearly snatched today. Must you constantly throw yourself into the line of fire?" In Lena's mind, telling her father and brother beforehand should have kept things perfectly safe. "Do you really think safety was guaranteed?" The Grand Duke's eyes were unreadable as he stared at her. He moved in his presence, heavy and suffocating. "What if they'd spirited you away before I could reach you? What if a blade had found you? Or if they'd forced that venom down your throat themselves?" Shrinking under his intense interrogation, Lena scrambled to explain that being there personally was the only way to extract the truth. Saving lives is one thing, but I refuse to let my little girl gamble with her life just for some intel. He shut his eyes, looking utterly defeated. The raw agony in his voice cut through Lena like a knife. Guilt washed over Lena. She never imagined her stubborn streak would crush her father's spirit like this. I only wanted to be useful. I'm so sorry. Her voice broke as silent tears began to trace down her cheeks. She sounded so desperate for forgiveness. It hurt his heart, yet a part of him felt a quiet sense of pride. He gathered her into a tight hug. How could he possibly stay angry at such a sweet, thoughtful girl? During their usual bedtime story session that night, a brilliant idea suddenly sparked in Lena's mind. If she could just bundle the venom together and force it out of the system, everyone would be saved. Her Fae abilities could manifest whatever she envisioned, so this had to work. She requested the vial of poison and held it fast, using the sample to lock onto the trail of the toxins. She envisioned a tiny water droplet capable of absorbing the venom. Suddenly, a brilliant glow erupted as her thoughts began to crystallize into reality. Dozens of tiny glowing orbs materialized. Her father stood there completely floored by the spectacle. "Dad, give these to the sick people." Her strength evaporated, and she collapsed against his chest. "They'll be okay now. And you won't have to struggle so much." Tears welled in his eyes at her whispered words. He pulled her tiny form close, overwhelmed by relief and love. It worked perfectly. Every single villager made a full recovery thanks to her miracle. Word of her bravery spread quickly, even landing her on the front page of the papers. The article introduced her to the world and lauded the Duke's leadership. Suddenly, everyone was talking about his prodigy daughter. His standing in society reached new heights following the incident. Nicole whispered that the Duke and the young lords had cleared out every newsstand in sight. Asterisk. Snap asterisk. Stacks of papers filled their rooms. They were even in talks to buy the whole publishing company for her. It was a bit much, making her blush. To mark the end of the crisis, she let the maids dress her in her finest. She was heading out for a date with her dad, starting at a local confectionery. The clerk started shaking the moment he saw the Duke, which made Lena's heart sink a little. Her father didn't even blink at the reaction. Lena eventually settled on some minty treats. Knowing they were his favorite, she used her own pocket money to buy every single mint in the store. "For you, Dad," she offered him the box, hoping the sweets would give him a little boost during his long work days. Out of nowhere, a passerby bumped into her, sending the box flying. Asterisk thud times. It landed right at the stranger's feet. Lena looked up to find him staring at her like he'd seen a ghost. Something about his face felt strangely recognizable to her. Yet her gut screamed at her to stay away. Without knowing why, she just froze and watched him from a safe distance. The Duke stepped in to retrieve the candies. Seeing him stoop down like that felt wrong to Lena. It galled her to see her father showing any sign of subservience to the stranger. As her father stood up to speak with the man in low tones, she wondered, could they actually be acquainted? Moments later, the Grand Duke swept Lena into his arms. "Let's head home, sweetheart. Daddy will buy you anything you want." The Emperor could only watch this tender display, feeling a phantom blade pierce his heart. A silent plea echoed in his soul. "Please stay. Look at me just once more, my little girl." He never imagined his long-awaited reunion with the daughter he had spent years mourning would be this agonizing. It all began when word reached him that the Grand Duke had captured one of the Empress's secret agents. Suspicious of his wife's motives, he had immediately dispatched investigators to the Grand Duke's northern territories. They stumbled upon a strange pattern. The Empress frequently sent people to an orphanage that only accepted young girls. A sudden realization struck the Emperor. The child he had spent 6 years searching for might be a daughter, not a son. Soon after, reports surfaced of a 6-year-old child recently adopted by the Grand Ducal family. The girl had come from that very orphanage, and her name was Lena. The Emperor's heart raced, recalling an old pact with the Empress. If the baby was a boy, he would be named Sherf. If a girl, she would be called Lena. Overwhelmed with emotion, he realized his child was still breathing in this world. He would stop at nothing to reach her. Driven by a desperate need to protect her, he raced toward the northern lands without a moment's rest. Throughout the journey, he rehearsed their first meeting. Should he embrace her immediately or simply whisper her name? Would he find the courage to say, "I am your father"? Would she tell him she missed him, or would she be resentful? He feared she would ask why he had only just arrived, yet destiny threw them together on a crowded street. He knew her the moment their eyes met, but her gaze was cold and empty, offering no hint of recognition. The silence was broken by a single word that shattered him. "Daddy," she called to the Grand Duke. The reality sank, and another man had already claimed the place he had failed to fill. "I trust your majesty has been well," the Duke asked. The ruler of the empire found himself uncharacteristically flustered. "It has been far too long, Grand Duke." He needed to speak with the man urgently. Bringing Lena home to the palace was his only priority. Sensing the emperor's intense, burning gaze on the child, the Duke narrowed his eyes. "Lena is my daughter," he declared coldly. The emperor's breath hitched upon hearing those words. The Duke clearly knew about her imperial heritage. Was he truly going to keep her from him? "But Lena is a princess," the emperor stammered. "She is my own flesh and blood." "Then where were you while she suffered for 6 long years?" the Duke countered, his voice dripping with disdain. The emperor was speechless. He had assumed she was cared for even if the orphanage lacked royal luxury. He had convinced himself she was at peace, but the Duke saw right through his self-delusion. "You abandoned her for 6 years," the Duke spat. "You have no right to play the father now." With that, he carried the girl away, leaving the biological father standing broken and alone in the biting wind. To watch his own child call a stranger father was a torment worse than death itself. Rage simmered within him toward the imperial consort, the woman whose lies had torn his family apart. That monster had convinced him his child was dead, even faking the gender to lead him astray. What was even more infuriating was that the royal physician, a man he had trusted for over 10 years, had conspired in her wicked schemes. The doctor maintained his story that a boy had been born that day. But contrary to the empress's claims, the infant hadn't been born without a heartbeat. It wasn't until hours later that a maid reported the death, followed by a suspicious, rushed burial. The emperor realized he had been blind to the treachery occurring right under his nose. No matter the cost, he would reclaim Lena. Meanwhile, a lavish celebration was underway at the palace. Princess Ella was playing hostess to the young nobility, basking in their hollow praise and constant fawning. She wore a mask of effortless grace, though her temper flared beneath the surface. This grand event was for her, yet her father was nowhere to be found. If only her brother were there to share the spotlight. Talk of the emperor's search for a powerful spirit user reached her ears, and she immediately thought of Lena. How dare that common brat possess the power that rightfully belonged to me? Though she had siphoned some of that energy, the thought of the future filled her with dread. If the emperor actually brought that girl back, she would have to play the part of the doting sister for now. What a brainless and insufferable peasant she turned out to be. It takes a soul as gracious and refined as mine to tolerate her presence, Ella mused with a weary sigh, lamenting the heavy burden of perfection. Eager to flaunt her spiritual gift, the princess commanded a servant to bring forth a tiny songbird. While the jewel upon her wrist glowed with a steady light, the creature burst into an enchanting, sweet melody, leaving the gathered nobility in absolute awe. To think we are witnessing Her Highness command such ethereal forces firsthand, it is simply divine. You are as radiant as a celestial being, Princess Ella basked in the shower of compliments, her ego thoroughly satisfied. Lowering her voice, she addressed the crowd. Tell me, has word reached you of the individual my father is seeking? One young lord piped up with frantic energy. The rumors say a fresh bloodline with spiritual talent has emerged. Truly a glorious day for our nation. Her expression soured instantly. This idiot clearly missed the poisonous subtext hidden beneath her words. A public humiliation was in order. Passing by the lad, she feigned a stumble and sent his goblet tumbling. Wine soaked into his priceless silk finery instantly. A smug grin tugged at Ella's lips, savoring the sweet taste of petty vengeance. Some mysterious royal materializing. Out of thin air. Doesn't that strike you as odd? I heard she was raised in the gutters with the peasantry. Is she merely a distant cousin from a fading branch, or perhaps a king's shameful secret born out of wedlock? How tragic to come from such low beginnings. I am desperate to meet her. I simply must offer my guidance to the poor thing. Whispers of pity for the newcomer's origins spread through the room, while the courtiers marveled at the princess's supposedly saintly heart. Deep down, Ella gloated. A girl raised in the dirt could never dream of being her peer. The seed is planted. Now the whole world views that child's lineage as a stain. Should she ever set foot in these halls, she will forever be branded the peasant princess by the court. Over at the ducal manor, Lena expressed her desire to delve into the archives of the house's noble lineage. She knew from the novel's plot that the consort and Ella were far from finished with their villainous schemes. Their tactic was to spark chaos only to save the day later, manufacturing a heroic reputation for the public to swallow. Lena needed to thwart their play using her future knowledge, turning the tides to bolster the Grand Duke's standing and salvage his house's honor. If her memory served her well, a pivotal moment was approaching in the enchanted woods bordering the estate, the manifestation of a legendary snow-white beast. She required every scrap of intel on that forest to prepare. Tucked away in the silent library, she pored over ancient scrolls alone. The sudden thud of a volume hitting the floor startled her. She went completely still. An intruder, heart hammering, she crept toward the sound only to find that same silver-trussed lad watching her. Their gazes locked through a gap in the shelving. "Identify yourself," she whispered, unable to contain her curiosity. He remained silent as the grave, the heavy stillness broken only by her racing pulse. She darted around the corner, but he had vanished into thin air. A phantom, perhaps absurd. This world follows magic, not spirits of the dead. My imagination is running wild, she thought, brushing aside the fallen tome with a nervous kick. A single phrase caught her eye. A fracture between realms. Intrigued, she leaned in to study the faded script. An interdimensional tear had opened within the forest, acting as a drain where raw mana was hemorrhaging into the void. The forest. It was the exact lead she needed. Had that boy intentionally guided her to this discovery? Scanning the vacant shadows, she called out, "Are you still here?" Silence was her only answer. "Whatever you are, thank you." The text detailed how the mana saturation was twisting the local flora and fauna into monstrous abominations. Though ancient seals held them at bay, the beasts were trapped within the woods. However, just 7 days before the New Year celebration, a sudden breach would unleash the horde. 𝐷𝐞𝐈𝐍𝐂𝐄𝐒 house was destined to take the fall for the catastrophe. The reason for the Duke's blame remained a mystery to her, but the underlying truth was crystal clear. The imperial consort had handpicked the forest as the stage for her next grand deception. She likely coveted the dense mana pooling there. The story described the emerging creature as a massive, bloodthirsty titan. My father, in his role as the Grand Duke, would be duty-bound to hunt the beast down. Yet, the records warned of a twist after the initial victory. Just as the festivities began, the monster would return while everyone's guard was down. Should I warn father to prepare for a second strike during the holiday? But her father would surely demand an explanation. How could she possibly justify it? Anxiety was etched clearly across Lena's features in that moment. Let the royals play their deadly games in the capital, but why drag the Duke's peaceful subjects into their mess? Knowing the catastrophe lurking on the horizon, she refused to back down and stepped out of the archives. She sent word for Wendy's brother, needing his specific expertise for her next move. The moment he learned his sister required assistance, Wendy handled everything instantly, bringing her every document she'd requested. Lena began scouring the dusty scrolls concerning the ancient mages. While she tried to predict the consort's upcoming schemes, he watched her intense focus with growing unease. That narrow escape from the kidnappers flashed in Wendy's mind. She was being way too bold. Was she planning another solo mission? He caught her gaze firmly. "Shushu, if this isn't just for your lessons, please promise me you won't go looking for trouble. No matter how desperate things get, you absolutely cannot go rogue. Lean on us, your family." Her protest died in her throat when she saw the sheer panic in Wendy's eyes. "Your safety is our priority. If anything happened to you, it would break our hearts." She returned to her research shortly after, though guesswork alone wasn't giving her the answers she desperately needed. A first-hand look at the Forbidden Forest was truly the only way to be sure. However, the Duke would never permit it, and she'd already given Wendy her word to stop playing the lone wolf. Could she convince the whole family to go along? She had already spent the entire night buried in her books. Nicole appeared with a concerned frown. "My lady, please sleep. Diligence is a virtue, but you're running yourself ragged." That sparked an idea. A field trip for her studies might actually work. Later that evening at the dining table, with everyone gathered, she cleared her throat and presented 3 handmade invitations. "Since my birthday is nearly here, I'd love to celebrate with all of you." Her pulse raced as she waited. She'd never asked for anything before. Would they say yes? The cards featured a sweet sketch of their family of 4. "Shushu, your birthday lands right on the New Year festival, doesn't it?" She admitted it wasn't her real birth date, just the day she'd arrived at the orphanage years ago. Receiving his first ever invitation from his little girl left the Grand Duke visibly choked up. Her brothers immediately began planning a massive gala, but a fancy party was the last thing on her mind. She voiced her true desire to honor her new family by studying their ancestral legacy in person. Since she'd been researching the Beast Woods, she suggested they all take a family trip there together. She barely got the words out before. "Absolutely not," they shouted together. "But why?" "We'll stick to the patrolled trails, and I'll be right by your side. We'll keep each other safe." She turned her wide, shimmering eyes toward her father, pleading silently. "Please, Daddy. Just this once, I'm begging you." Completely defenseless against his daughter's charms, the Duke crumbled within minutes. It was her very first request after all. A quick walk wouldn't hurt. He had sworn to give her the world, and this was a small price for her happiness. "Father, don't worry. I'll stay right next to you and be perfectly obedient." They headed out the following morning geared up and ready as a blanket of fresh snow coated the Duke's lands. Lena scanned their surroundings, feeling a bizarre tug at her senses as they approached the gates as if a voice were beckoning her. A wave of vertigo hit her, drawing worried glances from her family. Then a whisper echoed directly in her mind. Before she could even blink, a flash of white fur lunged straight at her. She froze as a massive feline hurtled her way, but Wendy's lightning-fast instincts saved her as he tackled the creature midair. The Duke rushed to her side, panicked. "Are you hurt? Did it scare you?" "I'm okay," she breathed. It didn't feel like an attack. She frowned at the tiny thing. "Is this the legendary beast? It's so small, though." The creature stared at her with wide, yearning eyes, squirming wildly to escape Wendy's grip and reach her. Slipping away, it dove at her again, pinning her to the soft snow with its surprising weight. A familiar hum resonated through her spiritual energy that felt like her own yet warped. Was this the power Ella had stolen? Luck was on her side as the Grand Duke yanked Lena back. "Father, do you think mana and spirit force can inhabit one person simultaneously?" "Absolutely not. They repel one another, and the internal conflict would prove fatal in no time." Observing the feline clutching, her Lena felt a prickle of unease. She detected a latent magical signature buried within its core. However, spirit energy was suffocating the mana. Unless that force is purged, its days are surely numbered. Throughout the initial tale, the imperial consort stained her hands with blood to usurp the throne. She even ruthlessly tormented the empress's legitimate daughter Lena. Conversely, she showered her own offspring with love, crowning her the saintess. Watching the cat, Lena recognized a reflection of her own suffering. A mere tragic puppet of the consort, Lena focused on extracting the spiritual essence from the creature. Agony flared through her, dropping her instantly to the dirt. What could be causing this? Is it impossible to extract integrated spirit energy? If extraction fails, perhaps concealment will work. A silken band manifested in Lena's palm. Utilizing it as a binding seal, she suppressed the energy. The moment the knot tightened, the beast transformed into a tiny kitten. Lena briefed the Grand Duke on the circumstances. The Grand Duke instantly realized the consort's henchman was lurking nearby, prompting a swift directive. A battalion of knights plummeted from above, dropping to one knee. "Comb the perimeter. Seize any suspicious individuals on sight." Lena questioned the little one. "Can you show us where the person who changed you is hiding?" At that, the kitten scampered ahead a bit before glancing back, beckoning Lena to keep up. Noticing Lena's sudden dash, the Grand Duke and her siblings mobilized instantly. Soon the kitten paused by a grove, yet the area seemed empty. The Grand Duke unsheathed his blade and cut the air, shattering an illusion. A sorcerer stood revealed in plain sight. He bolted, but Lena swiftly wove a massive spiritual web, trapping the caster instantly. With a proud nod, the Grand Duke stroked her hair and commended her brilliant performance. His warmth vanished instantly as he confronted the mage with an icy glare. "You have some nerve trespassing on my domain. Allow me to show you how we dispose of filth." However, Lena interjected with a superior plan, murmuring it to her father. By the following morning, the Grand Duke visited the holding cell. The sorcerer was on the ground, shivering with terror. "When is your next scheduled contact with your employer?" "2 weeks before the new year." "Whose orders are you following?" "An official from the Magic Tower." Yet the Grand Duke realized the imperial consort was the true mastermind. Still, their unwavering devotion to the imperial consort meant they would never implicate her. Lacking a confession, indicting the imperial consort was impossible. "When you report back, tell them the plan is proceeding without issue. Your only task is to avoid raising any red flags." The sorcerer frantically bowed, pledging his obedience. With matters settled, the Grand Duke exited the dungeon. The knight dispatched earlier had already made his return. He had successfully executed the Grand Duke's directives. He installed the young lady's invention at the gateway to the monster-infested woods. Mentioning it prompted the Grand Duke to boast about Lena's brilliance. The knight's ears were weary from the relentless onslaught of praise. "Quite right, the young lady is a genius." Lena had actually engineered a mechanism involving a windmill. By binding the mage to a post and engaging the windmill, the scent of human blood would drift across the landscape. This would lure the surrounding monsters to congregate at that specific spot. The Night Order would then spring a trap, annihilating the gathered beasts in a single offensive. This eliminated the need for mountain hunts, conserving resources and effort. The Grand Duke handed this grueling operation to the Night Order, Personally, he intended to celebrate beside his darling daughter, as this marked Lena's very first birthday. He committed to being by her side today and for every subsequent anniversary of her birth. In the meantime, Lena and her siblings debated the kitten's name. Dell proposed Little White, much to the feline's visible disdain. "Brother Dell, he doesn't seem impressed." Wendy chimed in, calling the suggestion utterly uninspired. Just then, the Grand Duke arrived, but the kitten hissed the moment he took a seat, acting hostile. Lena immediately scolded the creature, insisting it show her father proper respect. To everyone's surprise, the kitten's mood shifted instantly as it leapt into Lena's embrace, seeking affection. Lena urged her father to choose a name, confessing that hearing him say her own name for the first time felt like the exact moment her heart was won. Her words nearly brought the Duke to tears. After a moment of careful consideration, he decided on the name Mia for the little creature. Upon hearing her new title, the cat nuzzled against the Duke's boots, clearly delighted by his choice. Lena gazed up at him with wide, hopeful eyes. "Father, can I keep her? Can Mia stay with me forever?" Lingering doubt clouded the Duke's mind, knowing this animal was actually a monster modified by the Imperial Consort's hidden hand. Even with its true strength hidden by Lena, he questioned its safety. Taking the kitten's tiny paw, Lena whispered, "I will always be your shield, Mia. Will you stay by my side?" A spirited meow echoed back, serving as the kitten's enthusiastic vow of loyalty. The sight charmed the Duke into giving his blessing. Inside, Lena swore a silent oath to safeguard her entire family. With the precious princess's birthday looming, the Duke and his two sons were hit by the sudden startling realization that they were clueless about her true desires. The trio immediately called an urgent, high-stakes family summit. They brought in Lena's closest attendants, interrogating them about what might make the young lady truly happy. Prang recalled that the young mistress seemed most fond of chocolate pies since she often shared them as a special reward. It was her go-to treat, yet the disappointed faces of the three men indicated that a simple dessert wouldn't suffice as the ultimate gift. Showing more maturity, Nicole questioned why they were suddenly so focused on her mistress's personal tastes. "Shushu's birthday is just around the corner," they explained. "We want her to feel cherished, which means finding a gift that is nothing short of flawless." Nicole pondered the situation. While the girl adored her family, her cat, her toys, and fine dining, nothing stood out as a singular passion. It dawned on her, then, that her mistress lacked a deep, overriding obsession with any particular object. A wave of professional inadequacy washed over the maid. Failing to know her lady's heart felt like a betrayal of her duty, leaving all 5 people in the room paralyzed by an uncomfortable, silent tension. Nicole promised to escort the young mistress to the family treasury to observe what might catch her eye. To their surprise, Lena remained remarkably indifferent even when surrounded by mountains of priceless artifacts. Prang was vibrating with energy, but Nicole focused on a masterfully crafted dollhouse. Lena merely offered a polite compliment, noting its fine detail. When Prang brandished a shimmering gold blade, Lena gave it nothing more than a passing nod of approval. Her curiosity was finally piqued by a heavy sealed door at the back. Together the three forced it open and stepped into the unknown. Mia suddenly leaped from Lena's grasp, sprinting toward an elevated dais at the center of the chamber. They followed, only to be frozen in place by the dazzling sight of a massive basin overflowing with pure gold. Stories spoke of the Duke's legendary hoard, which he had magically transformed into waves of soft, shimmering golden sand for ease of storage. Witnessing this, Lena finally grasped the sheer, unfathomable scale of her father's fortune. Without warning, Lena dove into the gold, rolling around and basking in the sensation of being literally engulfed by riches. Prang couldn't resist and leaped in after her, laughing at the sheer absurdity of their luxury. In this dreamlike state, Nicole assumed they had finally found Lena's true passion, but the girl's mind was elsewhere. To Lena, the gold simply felt like a giant squishy bowl of pudding, which was far more entertaining than its monetary value. When it was time to leave, the little feline proved to be a gold lover at heart, stubbornly ignoring Lena's calls to abandon the shimmering pile. Relenting, Lena left the 2 maids to watch over the cat while she wandered off toward the portrait gallery. This was the very spot where that mysterious spectral lad had first appeared to her. Hoping for another encounter, she searched the halls in vain before turning her attention to the stern faces of the Duke's predecessors. One particular lady in a portrait possessed a striking, valiant beauty and an air of unmistakable sovereignty. Upon inspection, the resemblance between that ghost and this noblewoman was uncanny, sparking the theory that he was a lost branch of the family tree. She then realized the woman's painted hand was gesturing purposefully toward a specific corner of the room. Tracing the line of sight, Lena found nothing but an old cabinet, but a quick rap on the wall behind it revealed a hollow echo. She decided to channel her elven energy to carve a small opening and peer into the secret space. Instead, the barrier disintegrated in a flash of radiant light, exposing an intricate and unfamiliar magical seal. 𝐏𝐿 acted, instantly pulling Lena into a protective embrace before the dust from the collapse could even settle. A round little head suddenly emerged from the breach, followed by a plump body equipped with miniature wings. Two massive violet eyes gazed up from beneath a set of tiny horns. While 𝐏𝐿 tried to pull her away, Lena sensed no danger and signaled for her to wait. Somehow, she knew this tiny thing wouldn't hurt her. Lena locked eyes with it. Those pupils were a perfect match for her fathers, her brothers, and the lords of old. Father once mentioned their bloodline began with a dragon. Could this little guy actually be one? She hurried to her father with her find, but the Grand Duke just glared at the beast. He warned Lena to stay sharp and avoid touching unknown monsters. His coldness caught her off guard. "Forgive me, father. I shouldn't have brought it inside without asking your permission first. But I really want to keep him. Please, father, can we stay together?" Whenever Lena looked at him like that, his resolve crumbled. Where did she get such a soft heart? The words slipped out, and he instantly regretted it. Would that make her think of her real father? "I'm just like you, father. You're so kind. You took me in the moment we met." The world might tremble at the Grand Duke's name, but to Lena they were her saving angels. He told Lena to head to bed while he sent for someone to inspect the creature's health. Realizing it was being pulled away from her, the little dragon's face fell instantly. Its teary eyes pleaded for her to stay, but Lena followed her father's advice and skipped away. The second the doors shut, the air between the Grand Duke and the dragon turned icy. Neither the man nor the beast seemed particularly fond of the other at all. When asked about Lena's favorite things, 𝐏𝐿 confirmed that treats still topped her list. Fancy toys and riches were nice, but nothing lit her up like a delicious snack. Was it because she went hungry back at the orphanage? The Grand Duke wondered as 𝐏𝐿 spoke. It wasn't just about the present itself, 𝐏𝐿 explained, but what the young miss truly craved. At dinner, Wendy was a wreck after hearing Lena had nearly been crushed by a wall today. Meanwhile, Del's entire focus was stolen by the sight of that strange new dragon. Lena asked how to care for it, but her father said the ancient texts were empty. He'd heard they survived on pure energy rather than meals. Lena decided to name him 𝐏𝐸DEN. As she drifted off that night, the image of that pale, ghostly boy flashed before her eyes. The vision shifted back into 𝐏𝐸DEN. Just then, a faint scuffle echoed from behind her door. Exhaustion won, and she fell back asleep. When dawn broke, something felt strangely off. The silence was heavy. Usually the maids would have woken her by now, but no one came. Lena sat there for a while until 𝐏𝐿 finally came rushing into the room. As she helped Lena dress, 𝐏𝐿 suggested eating breakfast in the sunroom for a change. 𝐏𝐿 claimed the others had finished and the dining hall would be too lonely for her. Eating in the sunlight sounded nice. Yet Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something was up. The maid was definitely twitchy. On the way down, 𝐏𝐿 urged her to take the left stairs. She claimed the extra steps on the longer route would be good for her daily health. Lena wasn't buying it. It was obvious that 𝐏𝐿 was trying to keep her away from something. She bolted down the steps. Reaching the kitchen, she heard her brother's voices echoing from inside. Lena cracked the door open and peeked in. To her shock, they were actually baking a cake. The boys were bickering over the frosting, and Wendy was winning the debate against his brother. Losing his cool, Del grabbed a small pastry and launched it at his brother's head. It missed its target, smacked the door, and sent cream flying right onto Lena's face. Smack. Del froze in horror while Wendy stood paralyzed. Their plan to distract Lena had completely backfired. Lena saw the lopsided cake. It was a mess, but she saw the effort they poured in. The frosting read, "Happy birthday to me." Today wasn't her official birthday, but the Grand Duke had tracked down the date she was born. He didn't want her to celebrate her orphanage day, so he found her true birth date instead. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Lena could only blink her father's words, catching her completely off guard. She never imagined he'd go to such lengths. Upon entering the ballroom, they found a sea of nobles who had arrived hours early. Many happy returns. "My lady." The sudden collective greeting sent a jolt through Lena. Wendy whispered that every person there was a relative who had traveled miles to honor her special day. One lady gushed, "It is no wonder the Duke baked the cake. His daughter is simply the most precious thing ever." In high society, a noble in the kitchen was unheard of unless they were pouring their heart into a meal for someone loved. This gala was more than a party. It served as Lena's official debut into the prying eyes of the world. The Duke made no effort to mask his devotion, showing a pure, unconditional love for the girl. The sincerity of it all was overwhelming. Right then, Lena felt as though she were the luckiest person alive. With her family beside her, she felt invincible, ready to face any storm the future might bring. She felt she could conquer anything, to ensure his beloved adopted daughter had a perfect day. The Duke, a man who had never even touched a whisk, had personally labored over her birthday cake. He summoned the entire clan to celebrate, and Lena rose to the occasion with effortless poise and charm. She didn't miss a beat, greeting every kinsman by name and offering heartfelt thanks for their presence. The elders were stunned by her wit. To Lena, showing such respect to her new family was only natural. The Duke was positively beaming, boasting to anyone nearby about his brilliant little girl. The endless flattery left Lena feeling bashful, so she asked Wendy to sneak her away for a bite to eat. Suddenly, a young lad approached his heart, hammering the moment he caught sight of her doll-like face. "Time for the gifts," someone called out. Instantly, Wendy and Dell appeared like guardian shadows, warning the boy to keep his distance and his fantasies in check. Lena opened Wendy's gift first, revealing a tea set of breathtaking craftsmanship. She requested iced cocoa tea, and to her amazement, the pot immediately began pouring the frosty treat. This was no mundane porcelain. The set was powered by an incredibly scarce enchanted gemstone. The vessel would conjure any liquid the owner desired at a mere verbal command. It was instant gratification. Eager to present his tribute, Dell gently slid a pair of intricate bangles onto Lena's wrists. Naturally, these trinkets held a secret power far beyond their glittering appearance. A massive cloud of cotton candy materialized in Lena's palm, leaving the surrounding children wide-eyed and speechless. Such extravagant magical treasures were unheard of. Meanwhile, tucked away in a quiet corner, Eve watched with a sinking heart. Her own offering seemed pathetically plain against such wondrous, high-priced enchantments. She worried the young mistress would see her simple gift as a lack of effort. Swallowed by shame, Eve tried to sneak her package away, but Lena's sharp eyes caught her in the act. Caught in Lena's gaze, Eve went rigid, terrified she'd be accused of theft. Noticing Eve was on the verge of tears, Lena crossed the room and asked softly, "Is everything all right? Has something upset you?" Lena's gentle tone caught Eve completely off guard. Guilt washed over Eve for misjudging her. Suddenly, a harsh shout disrupted the moment. To Eve's horror, a boy had snatched her gift loudly, mocking its humble rough wrapping. "You actually brought this junk for the lady," he jeered, prompting judgmental murmurs from the guests. Despite her noble title, Eve's household was struggling just to keep their heads above water. A lavish present was out of reach, and the public humiliation made her face turn a painful crimson. Without hesitation, Lena stepped forward, took the package, and began to carefully open it. Inside was a delicate evening primrose ring. Lena slipped it on, found it fit perfectly, and squeezed Eve's hand. "I have been dreaming of a floral ring. How did you guess that evening primroses are my favorite? I can tell how much love you put into this." Lena added, her kindness exceeding all expectations. It clicked then. Lena had saved her from disgrace. She truly was an angel in human form. As the tension faded, the Duke approached, and Lena turned her excitement toward her father's mysterious tribute. This contraption was truly one of a kind. Cranking the upper lever summoned delicious, frozen treats as if by magic. Fueled by mystical shards, this device ensured she could indulge in her favorite dessert regardless of time or place. Seeing such a treasure sparked jealousy among the onlookers, but Lena simply lunged forward to hug her father tightly. She expressed deep gratitude to her father and siblings for those marvelous surprises. Every enchanted offering was tailored to her exact preferences, making this afternoon a memory she would forever cherish. While enjoying tea with her siblings, their peaceful afternoon was shattered by a servant bursting in, looking absolutely terrified. "My lady disaster, the crown prince has arrived and demands to see you immediately." Dread gripped Lena's chest while her brothers stood frozen. Why on earth would the heir to the throne seek her out? From the moment he discovered where his long-lost flesh and blood was hiding, the sovereign obsessed over Lena, desperate for her return to court. He commanded a formal assessment of her innate elven abilities. Upon hearing that the Grand Duke's interference had thwarted his father's attempt to retrieve his sibling, the prince resolved to invade the Duke's territory himself to escort his sister back to the capital. Detecting a threat, Wendy barked orders to bar the gates. Meanwhile, Dell checked Lena's temperature with a worried palm. You're burning up. Quickly, now let your brother escort you to your chambers." Yet the prince had already intruded. "Is this your standard hospitality?" Seeing him, Lena's breath caught in her throat. Something was off. This man didn't resemble the cold figure portrayed in the tale she knew. Traditionally, His gaze should have brimmed with loathing. He was supposed to denounce her as a charlatan masquerading as royalty. Instead, the prince stood there radiating pure delight. I am Lucas, heir to this great empire. At last we meet, dear sister. Her brothers scowled. Your Highness surely speaks in jest. Lena belongs to our family. Despite her intense desire to flee, she managed a graceful, formal curtsy. My respects, Your Highness. I am Lena Barrows. Her icy demeanor clearly unsettled the young royal. Why so cold? You are my true kin. I've arrived to bring you home to our palace. Lena's rejection was blunt. You are no brother of mine. Only Wendy and Dell hold that title. Wendy echoed her, demanding his departure. She is ours. Your Highness should search for his family elsewhere. Taken aback by their hostility, the prince stammered, but you're the final legacy our mother bequeathed to us. I've yearned for our reunion. Was he referring to the deceased empress? Hadn't she borne a son instead? And wasn't that boy long since buried? Wendy knew the truth about her origins, yet he refused to let the crown claim her. She wasn't a son but a daughter. Those lingering elven vibrations confirmed everything. Only those of imperial lineage can perceive the residue of such magic. Hearing this, Lena felt a chill seep into her soul. What of Princess Ella then? Had they been tracking every single move she ever made? Revulsion for the prince curdled in her stomach. Your Highness, can you provide any concrete proof of my supposed royal status? The prince faltered into silence, lacking any real confirmation. In the previous narrative, Lena would have been desperate for this connection. Back then, if she had even suggested her noble birth, he would have mocked her relentlessly, demanding impossible verification. At that point, however, Ella had already siphoned away her magic. Now she hurled his own cruelty back at him, yet the victory felt hollow and bitter. Genetic ties meant nothing to her now. Her heart belonged solely to the family within the Duke's walls. Wendy reiterated his demand for the visitor to exit, but the prince remained firmly planted in place. Isn't this an open house? Turning away a visitor is quite unrefined. Reluctantly, they led him toward the garden terrace. Very well provided. Lena acts as my personal guide. Lena recoiled at the suggestion, but the prince was unrelenting. Bound by social decorum, she was pressured into entertaining him. Thankfully, her brothers hovered close. Fear not, we won't leave your side for a single second. Bolstered by their support, she summoned the strength to endure the prince's presence. She directed the staff to serve snacks while ensuring her father was briefed on the unfolding drama. As they strolled toward the garden, the prince broke the silence. Lena seemed so frail, as if the wind might take her. His barb suggested the Duke had failed to nourish her properly. Dell gave a frustrated huff at those words. Do you have any idea how much effort it takes to put even an ounce of weight on her? The prince's remark left Lena reeling. To her, it felt like she had already packed on a significant amount of mass. Once the party settled in the garden, the heir apparent questioned Lena on whether she had any desire to visit the royal residence. Lena gave a firm no. I'm far too young for court life, she replied. Well, then I have no choice, he sighed. Reaching into his tunic, the prince produced a sealed envelope. Consider this your formal summons to the heart of the empire. Upon breaking the seal, Lena found an invite to the New Year's gala. Terrifyingly, it bore Princess Ella's personal signature. The color drained from Lena's face instantly. Her trembling fingers gripped the card, staring at the name that had caused her so much agony. Even a glimpse of those letters was enough to send an uncontrollable shiver racing through her entire body. Although the prince was oblivious to Ella's past cruelty, Lena couldn't shake the stinging sensation of being stabbed in the back. Moments ago, he was playing the doting brother, yet now he had presented something designed to turn her stomach. Actually, Ella didn't suggest this, and I didn't ask her to. He clarified. His Majesty penned this invitation himself. It seemed the Emperor, noting Lena's age, used Ella's name to disguise the summons as a simple children's party. This was a royal decree. You are required to accompany me to the palace. For a fleeting second, Lena felt a spark of pure hot rage. In her mind, this was nothing short of an open threat. Just then the Grand Duke arrived and snatched the letter from her hand. Your Highness, the Duke began coldly, given our recent successes in the campaign against the Mana Beasts. My household holds the privilege to skip the New Year festivities. Spotting him, Lena cried out, Father, with a voice full of hurt. Hearing that title directed at the Duke sounded like jagged glass, grating against the prince's pride. The Grand Duke placed the power back in Lena's hands, making it clear that her own will would determine her next move. Ever since her adoption, the original timeline had shattered. Consequently, her fated confrontation with Ella was arriving much sooner than expected. But if they met now, would she be stripped of everything she had worked so hard to build? In her past life, Lena viewed the Empress and Ella as nothing more than apex predators hunting her down. Now, she saw them as invaders trying to plunder her happiness. Rather than running, she decided it was time to face them head-on. Lena met her father's gaze with iron resolve. "I'll go." "Very well," he replied. "Then I shall stand by your side." With that, the Duke scooped Lena up and walked away, ordering his staff to ensure today's meeting remained a strict secret. He also commanded Wendy to prepare for the palace, acting as a personal shield who would never leave Lena's side. At that moment, the dread that had been haunting Lena finally began to dissipate. With her father and brother guarding her, she had the ultimate defense. This time she refused to let them take anything from her. The long-lost little princess finally crossed the threshold and entered the sprawling halls of the imperial palace. The second she saw the Emperor, Lena froze. The physical resemblance was uncanny. Was this truly her sire? A wave of confusion hit her. Why did his face feel so familiar? Then it clicked, this was the very man she had encountered out on the streets. What business did the Emperor have in the Duke's territory back then, observing the gentleman before her now? Lena struggled to reconcile this kindness with the heartless monarch from the original story who had completely discarded her. Her heart grew heavy with doubt, but her father's presence grounded her. She offered a graceful, polite curtsy. "Salutations, Your Majesty. I am Lena." The sovereign then held out a small, ornate box, gesturing for her to take it. Lena opened the lid to find a collection of fine sweets. "I recall seeing you with a box of treats that day," he noted. "You must have a sweet tooth now." It turned out he still felt guilty for knocking over her candy during their first encounter. Lena clarified that those sweets had been a gift for her father, then politely declined the Emperor's peace offering. After returning the box, she immediately retreated back to the safety of the Grand Duke's shadow. Once the formalities were finished, the Grand Duke wasted no time in preparing their departure. He intended to take the children home to rest, but the Emperor's suggestion of staying in the palace was met with a blunt refusal. "Your Majesty, we maintain our own estate within the capital." Suddenly, a frantic messenger burst in with a report. He claimed an incident had occurred at the Duke's city mansion. A mysterious assailant had launched a sudden attack. While no lives were lost, the building's facade had been heavily damaged during the chaos of the assault. "Given the circumstances, do you really want to bring children to a crime scene? If you must go, leave them here." Hearing the Emperor's proposal, a cold wave of anxiety instantly washed over Lena. Clinging to her family's sleeves, she refused to let go. Left with no choice, the Grand Duke remained within the palace walls with his children. As she walked away, the Emperor's lingering gaze remained fixed on her small, retreating form for what seemed like an eternity. A servant escorted the young lady to a lavish suite where a spread of delicate treats already awaited her arrival. Furthermore, a private attendant had been appointed and was currently en route to attend to her needs. Exploring her new quarters, she stumbled upon a chamber overflowing with exquisite shimmering gowns. A card resting there read, "My precious star, I've waited so long for you." Reading it made her stomach turn. In her previous life, she had died without ever receiving a single ounce of his validation. Now they were falling over themselves to please her. Just then her new personal maid arrived, bowing low to the young lady. "I'm Talia, your new servant." Upon hearing that name, Lena's expression immediately soured. "So we crossed paths this early." Facing her new attendant, the girl took a deliberate tumble to the floor. She burst into loud theatrical sobs, wailing that she was being mistreated by the servant. Stunned by the sudden outburst, the terrified maid could do nothing but stammer out frantic apologies. Alerted by the crying, her father and brother rushed in. The Duke's freezing glare landed on the girl. "You dared hurt her." Nestling into her father's embrace, she whispered that this woman was actually the Empress's personal informant. In the past life, that same woman had been sent by Her Majesty to keep a constant watch on her. Her Majesty was simply recycling her old, predictable schemes. Enraged, the Duke nearly threw her in the dungeon, but Lena urged him to keep his cool since they were still guests. A simple replacement would suffice, without causing an unnecessary scene. Once alone, she revealed the Emperor's sickening note and the wardrobe full of bribes to her father. Both men were stunned. It was clear the monarch was trying to entice her away from them. Thinking he could buy her loyalty with such trifles was an insult to their household. The Duke barked orders to toss the clothes, while Wendy held her close, whispering sweet comforts. "You're so small, Lena. Lean on us grown-ups instead of trying to handle everything yourself. But you're only 11, brother." Meanwhile, the Empress sat at her vanity studying her reflection. The disgraced maid stood trembling nearby. "Well, what did you make of the brat? She seems unnervingly poised." Not at all like a typical 7-year-old, the Empress chuckled darkly. Hardly the personality one would expect from that woman's offspring. Under her mistress's sharp gaze, the maid dropped to her knees, frantically explaining how the girl had framed her. She confessed how the child's public meltdown had completely ruined their chance to infiltrate the Duke's circle. So, you were simply tossed out. Did you not even try to plant a backup spy in your stead? Terrified by the questioning, the servant could only bang her head against the floor, begging for a second chance. The steward himself handled the replacement. I couldn't stop it. This news made the Empress pause. Was this the sovereign's plan? She dismissed the maid, who fled the room, feeling relieved that her life had been spared. Moments later, the Empress coldly ordered her execution before asking about the magical beast experiment at the Duke's border. The shadows reported that the sorcerer in charge had sent word. Everything went as planned, pleasing her. This task had to be flawless. Errors were forbidden.